Today on Locked On Red Wings, Moritz Seider is the 20th ranked NHL defenseman and remembering Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty is also the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, got to tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a three-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. On today's episode, as noted in the cold open, we'll be talking about Moritz Seider being ranked the 20th best defenseman in the NHL by NHL Network, as well as Austin Watson being signed to a PTO with the Detroit Red Wings. And then in the third segment, we will be doing a little bit of a walk down memory lane after the unthinkable tragedy that occurred last week regarding Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. But before we get to that, Scotty, I hope you had a really good Labor Day, buddy. We're officially into fall, and the Tigers are still over 500. So that's something to be cheerful for sure.
Yeah. Good September baseball for the first time in a while. And hockey, this month we have like hockey things happening in the month of September. So happy September to everybody, and hopefully we get to hockey season pretty quickly here.
Yes, absolutely. As players are now coming back from overseas, hopefully there will be new contracts being signed very shortly. And for one of those guys, that would be Moritz Seider. A NHL ranking from analysts and producers came out of the top 20 defensemen in the NHL, and Moritz Seider was ranked 20th in the NHL as a defenseman, out of all defensemen. My first question to you, Scotty, is like first knee-jerk reaction when you saw he was ranked 20th out of all defensemen in the NHL. Were you like, that's too high, that's too low, or is that kind of just right?
Yeah, I honestly, it was kind of a roller coaster of a few seconds there. Like that came out and kind of made the rounds on Wings Twitter and whatnot. And I guess my first reaction, like my initial, hey, Seider's ranked 20, is okay. Like I probably think if I looked at this list, I would have him ranked better. Like I would have him ranked higher. Then I read through the list, and I guess part of it was just realizing how many good number one defensemen there are in the NHL currently. I think that's something that maybe I don't want to say like haven't realized, but what wasn't something that I was conscious of, I guess, when I heard about Seider's ranking initially. So once I kind of read through the list, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of okay with 20, right? Like my initial, right when I read it, was, wow, I'd probably have him, a little bit higher in the teens and whatnot. But after reading the list, I think I'd have him ahead of who's at 19. But besides that, like I think that it's pretty close to like accurate, and I'm pretty fine with it. I also think that it's, we always have to separate future value and predictive value versus current actual value, and I think of all the people on this list, Seider is up there towards the top in highest ceiling that could be obtained. But as far as like how good and how valuable they are to their organization right now today, I think I'm pretty fine with it, even though my initial reaction was a little herky jerky for sure.
Well, and, I have to admit a little bit of hometown bias in there as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just get defensive of any national media outlet that ranks anything Detroit. I'm just like, it should be higher. And then I went through and I read it, and I was like, all right, well, again, I would have had him ahead of 19, but that's one spot I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
You keep saying 19, but you're not saying the player's name. Do you have like a grudge against this player?
No, I didn't know if we were gonna like go through like some of the names. It's Dougie Hamilton. Like I think Seider should be ahead of Hamilton. He didn't have a very good year. That last year he wasn't on the ice much.
Barely played.
Right. I think that's more of a kind of a I don't know, like tenure thing than anything else. But again, that's one spot. I'm not getting red in the face about it. I think honestly,
He's so mad.
I look at you, emotional. It's I don't know. It's one of those things where I think, even though my initial reaction was kind of negative as I read through, I was like, actually, I'm pretty pumped that he's even on here. Like, I'm glad that it's not a top 25 or a super, like it is 20, and the fact that his name is on there at all, I think is pretty cool.
I tell you what, for me personally, this was a hell yeah moment. This was like, this team is for sure heading in the right direction, and national pundits are starting to recognize the talent that is on this hockey team. Because we heard all year, right? And obviously, we're huge defenders. Obviously, Seider's analytics this past year did not look good, and people started questioning whether or not he had regressed after having won the Calder Trophy and had 50 points. He put 42 up in 2 straight years after that, and his advanced numbers didn't look good. And of course, we went to bat and said, yeah, his advanced numbers don't look good. Look at his usage. It's insane. So it's nice to see that national media is recognizing that, no, he's really freaking good. Like the little blurb they wrote about, I'll just read it verbatim too. This is on NHL.com. This is chosen by NHL Network producers and analysts. This is what they have for Moritz Seider. Seider has not missed a game in his 3 NHL seasons, which included 42 points last season, 9 goals, 33 assists, 17 power play points, while leading Detroit in ice time at 22-22 for the 3rd straight season. The 23-year-old, also the only player to have at least 200 hits and 200 blocked shots last season. Seider won the Calder Trophy as an NHL rookie. You know the rest. So he's the youngest player on this list, and that is not for nothing.
Yeah,
The fact that Moritz Seider at 23 years old is ranked in the top 20 is incredible. And for me, it's him being at 20 is not a slight against him. Like, I agree he should be at 19, but we're splitting hairs over one.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's a lot of players on this list that are ahead of him because of tenure, right? Reputation. They have the hard. Some of these guys have a lot of hardware behind them, be it team hardware or individual hardware. Seider doesn't necessarily have that yet. He does have the Calder Trophy, which is a great start, but he's only 3 years in. So this is one of those situations where I look at this list and I see he can pass that guy, he can pass that guy, he can pass that guy. I legitimately think he can be a top 10 defenseman in this league. You get into the top 10, then you start getting into your Adam Foxes, your Charlie McAvoys, your Miro Heiskanen, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Gets a little tougher. But like for me, I saw this like this is a great start for a player who's so young in his career to be listed with these guys who are tenured veterans and are so good. For him to already be here is nothing short of a positive sign that this team is heading in the right direction, and that national media recognizes his talent despite the poor advanced analytics he put up in that very tough usage. So I was pumped at it, and like you said, like, yeah, I could split hairs and put him a little higher, and like I agree, like Dougie Hamilton being there, like we are guys who are like, we don't hold injuries against players, and Dougie Hamilton had 74 points the year before he only played 20 games this last season because of injury. So I don't know. I feel like put the guy who, actually played ahead of him, but at the same time, he does have, again, the track record. And that's what a lot of these guys here, they're good defensemen who have long track records of success. But Moritz Seider, I think he has all the tools, per se, and even a little bit of track record himself to warrant being on there. 82 games per season for his first 3, Calder Trophy, and over 40 points, and a 200-200 season. Like, he's him. Like, I'm sorry. I think he's going to be, at a bare minimum, if I'm being conservative, a top 15 defenseman in the league. I think he has top 10 potential. I really do.
Yeah. I think most of us do. I think this year, aside from just the usage that will hopefully go his way that we've talked about ad nauseum already this offseason, I also think that just the natural progression a little bit, and then just I think going and presumably, again, we'll see how it unfolds, but presumably being a part of power play 1 is a huge point, getting opportunity for him as well. And I think if the defense continues to progress and be really good like it has been, he will get inherently between power play 1 plus just even strength usage, he could end up being a a high point producing lockdown defenseman, and that's what a top 10 defenseman in the NHL is. So yeah, I think this year a lot of people are really excited for the Wings in general, but how quickly we forget that Seider is still as young as he is and is still hopefully going to get better and better.
I am so desperate for Red Wings hockey, dude.
Yeah,
just any hockey in general, man. At least football is coming back. That gives us.
Football. I was walking around downtown this morning, and it was a little brisk in the air. Some orange leaves. Had a sweatshirt on. Felt good, man. Can't wait for that time of year.
You ever walk outside after the first frost of the year and you like smell the air and you're like, that's the fall right there.
That's right, baby. That's what I'm talking
crisp.
about.
That's some crisp air. Scotty, we're going to do a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the PTO for Austin Watson and Arbor Native. Stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. You heard us talk about it. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game on Sunday afternoon out of market. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Just visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, we got some news last week. We actually completely forgot to bring it up with Andrew Rinaldi when we were talking about the Grand Rapids Griffins, about the possibility of Austin Watson being with the Griffins next year.
We talked about it with him immediately after hitting end recording. We were like, oh, shoot.
But the reason we didn't go back and re-record is because it's not a groundbreaking PTO. It's a professional tryout for an Ann Arbor native. He has had a decent NHL career. He's played with the Nashville Predators, the Ottawa Senators, this last year the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's played, fourth line minutes most of his career, but he's been an NHL hockey player. So my question for you, Scotty, is what do you expect, if anything, out of Austin Watson? Do you think he has a shot at making the roster this year?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm going into this expecting him to make the roster. I think that, I don't know, like, teams hand out a lot of PTOs this time of year to fill out, camp and preseason rosters and lines and whatnot. And so, yeah, like if you like a guy's style of play or think that there's a potential for him to play his way on there, then yeah, you give him a PTO and most likely he's not going to make the team. I think that we were talking on air, we were talking off air on here before we hit record, and you had mentioned the something we've talked about a lot, but just, on top of just the fact that this is a PTO and it does happen every once in a while, but it's not super common for those guys to like outright make the NHL roster for sure. One of the points you brought up was just the fact that when you look at the forward group, like we're kind of set, right? Like it's a conversation we've had a lot, but even if it isn't set in stone with the 12 or the 12, 8, and 3 that they have right now, even if that isn't set, like, okay, they cut somebody or they find a trade partner for Justin Hall or like something, magic happens and a roster spot opens up. Are they going to use it on a guy like Austin Watson, or are they going to, break their back and do gymnastics like that in order to open up a roster spot for one of the younger players that's impressed in camp? I feel like on the priority list, he's probably still pretty far down.
So, there's 3 things that stand out to me about the Austin Watson trade, or signing rather, the PTO. One of those is that he's an Ann Arbor native. This screams to me, this is a guy who wants an opportunity, struggling to find a contract. He, if anything, wants an opportunity to play in his hometown or his home state team in this case, before he ends up retiring. The second thing that stands out to me is that this feels like competition for training camp. This is another player to throw in there to make the younger players or even the veterans who are slated, like a Tyler Mott or a Christian Fisher, who are maybe slated to make the roster, in our opinions, feel a little bit of heat on their heels to push them to play harder and really earn their spot. And the third thing is like this might be more of a tryout for Grand Rapids than it is for Detroit. He only played 33 games with the Tampa Bay Lightning last year. I don't think he played any in the AHL with whomever their affiliate is. Is it still the Crunch? I can't remember. But because when he did play in the NHL, he only averaged 7 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time, and he didn't play power play or penalty kill as far as I could tell. He averaged like 5 seconds and 5 seconds for both. So it's more of a situation where he got caught out there and had to get off the ice. So like he doesn't play special teams. He plays fourth line minutes, but not a ton. Like, to me, he just feels like competition for training camp that'll inevitably become Grand Rapids depth and maybe, a call-up if injuries were to occur. I don't see as Austin Watson being a real threat to make the NHL roster, especially because of what you stated. Like, this roster construction, we'll probably do another mock lineup later in the week because this roster construction still doesn't make any sense. They got 23 players, but only 12 of them are forwards, 8 of them are defensemen, and 3 of them are goalies. Like, who are you cutting on the forward core for Austin Watson at this point? No one.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyler Mott is Austin Watson. They're not the same player. Austin Watson, he's got a little bit more edge to him, right? Like, you bring him in to be the big physical guy. You send him out there for fights, stuff like that.
Maybe that's
his role.
It's just like, hey, get a physical player into camp to kind of, push some of the fringe guys around and add some physicality into the preseason and into camp to give, like you said, a little bit of that competition, a little bit of that edge there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have high expectations for this PTO. But I think that more than anything, this is just an opportunity for him to play in his home state and also provide a little bit of pressure on the guys we expect to make the roster. But with this roster construction, I still think that I just don't think they can go into. They have 23 players. Like, they can go into opening night with this roster. And I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but that's patented Brian.
It would be weird.
It'd be weird if I didn't go off on a tangent.
I was not talking about you, but yes, you are weird. I was talking about them going into the roster with how it's constructed would be abnormal. Like, that's
I feel
a unique thing.
They're gonna waive if they're not making a trade. I feel like they're going to waive a defenseman or a goaltender that they're not really afraid of losing, and if they do lose, they're not gonna, cry a river about.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that number is 3, but I've been wrong on that. That prediction all summer long on them moving on from Justin Holl in some way, shape, or form.
We'll see.
I just
Austin
Watson.
To your point about Watson is like also if he is willing to play in the AHL, then like there's a chance that if we liked what we saw, we don't have any room for you on the NHL roster. If you want to be that physical presence down in Grand Rapids, then so be it.
Yes, absolutely. I don't have anything else to say about Austin Watson. There's not a lot to break down. We've kind of done.
I think honestly the bigger conversation is just like as these PTOs get handed out, especially to forwards, I don't think there's really any room for any of them to work their way onto the team.
No, not really. We're going to take another quick break. When we return, we'll do a little bit of walk down memory lane of our memories of Johnny Gaudreau and also Matthew Gaudreau. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. I mean, you guys know by now. We recorded on Thursday before this unthinkable tragedy occurred, and we're recording this today on Labor Day in preparation for this Tuesday episode. So the news is out there, and we're not reporting on it, so we're not going to break down, how awful these events are. So we just more want to talk about, what we remember of Johnny Gaudreau and talk a little bit about his brother Matthew Gaudreau as well, because the hockey world was just shaken by the loss of an NHL All-Star and his professional hockey player brother as well in Matthew Gaudreau, who played in the ECHL, and it reverberated not just through hockey, but sports in general. Like, even Comerica Park held like a little moment for the Gaudreau brothers, and it's weirdly one of those things for me, Scotty, that doesn't feel real, because who would ever expect to have this kind of tragedy occur? And not that whenever it happens to anybody, it's terrible, but it adds to the burn too when it was somebody so talented and in the prime of their life, and both of them had incredibly young families themselves. I don't know about you, Scotty, but when it comes to Johnny Gaudreau, there's one memory that in particular stands out, and I don't think I'm alone in this memory of Johnny Gaudreau. It is his overtime goal in Game 7 of, I believe, Round 1 against the Dallas Stars. And what's funny about that, too, is I remember watching that game. I was at my parents' house. I remember watching that game thinking to myself, this is Ottinger's legacy game. He was so young at the time still, but like he had a 60-plus save game. He was keeping the Dallas Stars in it. And I was thinking to myself, this is the game where Ottinger cements himself as one of the NHL's best goalies. And here comes Johnny Gaudreau in overtime, over-the-shoulder snipe at Saddledome Arena, and the place just erupts. And that was the moment in those playoffs where I was like, I think I'm going to hitch my wagon to the Calgary Flames. The uniform, the hype around that team with the players that they had, including Matthew Tkachuk, who, now that he's in the Atlantic Division, we hate with a burning passion. But that was a fun team with a lot of talent, and I really thought that team had the makings of a Stanley Cup championship team. And that was a moment where I was made aware of, oh my gosh, the star power that this kid has.
Yeah, I obviously that's one of the big moments that stands out. I was watching that game with my now roommate. We weren't roommates at the time, but he's been one of my best friends my whole life. And we were watching that game. And after he scored that goal, we like tackled each other and started screaming, "Johnny Hockey, Johnny Hockey." And I just incredible. Yeah, man, like obviously this is an absolute tragedy and really isn't about hockey, right? Like this is just about two innocent guys just riding a bike. And it's awful. And it has transcended not only the fan bases of the teams that Johnny played for and that, of course, Matthew played for, right? Like Boston College has talked a lot about it. Obviously, two program staples there. Just a unthinkable, like you said earlier, awful situation. And I appreciate the fact that it has transcended not only those fan bases, but also the entire sport of hockey and really the entire sports world. Like this is something that everybody is acknowledging for as awful as it is and is trying to support the now obviously in much pain Gaudreau family. And just the situation that those, like you said, young families are now in is absolutely terrible. So all of the stories that have poured out about both of them, all of the off-ice stories too, like the incredible off-ice stories, right? Well, like Johnny Gaudreau leaving his bachelor party, sneaking out of his bachelor party to spend time with his soon-to-be wife, like just wife and their family. Incredible. Yeah. And so many. I'm glad that there's so much about Matthew as well, because again, this isn't just about like a really good hockey player passed away. Like these are people with families and so hearing all of the stories about Matthew and Johnny and about their personalities and all the things that they accomplished off the ice and all the things they would say to the media about what they wanted to be off the ice and what they wanted to accomplish off the ice. And I hope that the family finds peace in the fact that it sounds like both of them just wanted to be good people, and by most accounts it sounds like they did accomplish that. So I obviously terrible and something that will certainly be talked about forever, really, in the hockey community, and will be something that I'm sure will be talked about, and I'm sure both of their lives will be honored this upcoming NHL season, which they obviously should. And just terrible. So yeah, continued thoughts and prayers and all the support in the world to that family that is mourning.
Well, and the thing too is like there's never any silver linings in tragedies like this. But the one thing that is like kind of along the lines of what you were saying, that's I don't want to say heartwarming because again, these is such a tragic situation. Everything involved, brothers, sons, fathers, husbands, like it's just everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But the outpouring of love from across the sports world has been absolutely incredible to watch because, you see teams that are not in the city of Columbus, not in the sport of hockey, posting and saying like this is an unthinkable tragedy. And then, there's a GoFundMe for Matthew Gaudreau to help support the funeral costs. And of course, because I believe his wife is expecting as well. And you just look at the donor lists, and it's pro player, ownership, just all donating, and it's all 1,300, all homages to Johnny Gaudreau as number 13. There's not a ton, there's no silver linings with this, but it is a little heartwarming to see the amount of support, and as you put it as well, the amount of stories that have come out because we're not, we're not Columbus Blue Jackets fans. We're not Calgary Flames fans. We didn't know Johnny Gaudreau intimately like those fans would. So we like hearing all these stories about how both of them off the ice were such phenomenal people. It makes the tragedy all the worse, but all at the same time to see how loved they were is an incredible thing to watch. It really is. So this is an unthinkable tragedy on so many different levels, but like you were saying, like the just thoughts, prayers, just go out to the family. And I just hope that, like you were saying too, just if there's any peace to be found, that they can find it.
For sure. Yeah. And call an Uber.
Yes.
Not
never drink and drive. It is
not hard, man.
An incredibly selfish decision to do. Just
really not hard.
Especially there's no excuse there's never an excuse at any day and age, but even more so in this day and age, where you have your Uber and Lyft at the tips or all of your contacts. You could have called anyone. So just
it's unbelievably avoidable in 2020.
An unbelievably selfish decision to make. So never drink and drive. Because you don't just rob two people of life. You ruin the lives of everybody that person loved and was loved by. So with that, Scotty, I think that's a good place to end it. We'll be back tomorrow with a new episode as well. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Same time.
Yeah. Tomorrow. Do we know what we're talking about tomorrow?
The Red Wings.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe Little Tigers. Who knows?
Probably a safe bet. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Love you all. Be kind. Yes. Love you, Bri.
Be smart.
Yep. Tell people you love them.
Yep.
We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Same time, same place. To your team. Every day.
Every day.